soldiers from any country on the Eastern Front weren't spoiled at mealtimes. Due to the vastness of the Eastern Front and the early defensive failures of the Red Army, which led to the loss of the most important agricultural regions to the German invader, food shortages complicated the Soviet war effort at and behind the military front. In the occupied territories and besieged Leningrad, Hitler's War of Annihilation condemned millions of Soviet citizens to death by starvation. There was a need for Allied assistance in the food supply. The USSR, attacked by Germany on June 22, 1941, was declared eligible for Lend-Lease aid on November 7, 1941. The first convoy of American and British cargo ships steamed into the harbor of Murmansk, while the German armies were hammering at the gates of Moscow. Soviet records show that Red Army troops in September 1941 were supposed to receive daily rations of 800 grams of rye bread, 500 grams of potatoes, 320 grams of vegetables, 170 grams of cereal and pasta, 50 grams of fat, 35 grams of sugar, 150 grams of meat, and 100 grams of fish. However, logistics not always permitted the system to work properly. The Red Army generally fed its troops with portable field kitchens. They were placed on a wheeled trailer or on the back of a flatbed lorry and consisted of several cauldrons and a compartment to store food and kitchen utensils. These kitchens were almost always located several miles from the front, so delivering the food was another challenge. Soldiers had to carry the heavy cauldrons with food from the kitchen to the front lines via trenches, risking their lives. Cooks did what they could to vary the rations. The main dish served was kulesh, soup made of millet to which other ingredients, for example, lard or vegetables, could be added. Field kitchens also served popular Russian soups such as borscht and cabbage soup, as well as stewed potatoes and buckwheat with boiled or stewed beef. The difficulty of delivering fresh meat to the front during World War II saw the Spam become a ubiquitous part of the Soviet food ration. Spam is a mixture of chopped pork shoulder, ham, salt, water, modified potato starch, and sodium nitrate. During the war, the Soviet Union received cans of Spam through Lend-Lease. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev wrote in his autobiography titled Khrushchev Remembers, "Without Spam, we wouldn't have been able to feed our army." Interestingly, Stalin disliked the idea of his people receiving an American foodstuff, so he demanded to change the name from Spam to Tushonka. No special arrangements were made for Jews or Muslims who did not eat pork. An intriguing side of Soviet military provisioning was the neglect of water, which soldiers had to forage for themselves. The difficulty of obtaining safe drinking water made vodka and tea primary beverages in the soldiers' ration. Over the course of the war, the Soviet army system of provisioning was functioning better and better. If the Soviet soldiers died from something, it was not from hunger. But what was it look like before the German army invasion of 1941? Although the Nazi attack greatly escalated the Soviet role in the war and fixed for good which side the Red Army fought on, the USSR entered the Second World War as Hitler's ally by attacking Poland on September 17, 1939. Hitler received most of the blame for violating Polish sovereignty and starting the Second World War. Meanwhile, Joseph Stalin tried to convince everyone that the Red Army's invasion of eastern Poland is not aggression, but liberation from the power of the Polish aristocracy. The Red Army vastly outnumbered the Polish defenders already fighting against the Germans, achieving its targets encountering only limited resistance. While Soviet military hardware seemed modern enough, the soldiers themselves did not cut any impressive figure. Locals described them as dirty, disheveled, malnourished, smelly, and unfamiliar with some of the basic accoutrements of modern life. The Red Army's appearance contrasted with that of the orderly, clean-cut Wehrmacht. Many Red Army men were awestruck by the quality and choice of consumer goods in the shops of eastern Poland. A lot of them had never been abroad. Soviet propaganda taught them that the USSR was a workers' paradise and the capitalist world was full of misery and deprivation. No wonder that Red Army men wanted to bring back home whatever they could. Of particularly interest were items hard to find or unavailable in the USSR. These included fresh foods, particularly meats, as well as quality consumer goods, especially clothing and watches. Almost 2 months after the invasion of Poland, Soviet forces bombed Helsinki and invaded Finland on November 30, 1939. For the Soviets, it was an operational disaster of the first magnitude, Made worse by the Arctic weather. Many Red Army troops were from warmer parts of Russia, and the army offered little to no training in winter combat conditions. In addition, the army was unable or unwilling to properly feed its troops. There are known cases when exhausted and hungry Soviet soldiers paused in their attack to eat the sausage soup that the retreating Finns had left behind in their field kitchens. The Finns called the starving, freezing, and surrounded invaders mealtimes, sticks bundled for firewood and left to be picked up later. Despite superior military strength, especially in tanks and aircraft, the Soviet Union suffered severe losses and initially made little headway. Hostilities ceased in March 1940 with the signing of the Moscow Peace Treaty, in which Finland ceded 8% of its territory to the USSR.